Welcome to Career Insights, where we help career-driven professionals advance their career the smartest way possible. If you're new to this channel, feel free to subscribe, where we provide tips, insights, and exclusive interviews on being able to maximize your career. We have a great oh, here you go. I was wondering if we were going live or not. There was a little bit of a delay, but welcome to joining us today. And so today we have Charlotte A. Lee, who is a senior vice president and a managing consultant at Lee Hecht Harrison. And she's joining us today to talk to us about her book, Bring a Dead Mouse. If you're new to this channel, feel free to come to amazonlive.com, where we will be able to have a interactive session. If you're joining us from YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, please come over to amazon.com/live. And if you are already here, feel free to subscribe, because here we will be providing additional content as it relates to future authors. Before I begin, I wanted to just also mention, if you happen to see my eyes shifting, it's because I'm a streamer that's by myself. So I will be making sure that I curate all the questions that come through. But let's bring in Charlotte. Welcome, Charlotte. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Bernardo. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much. I'm doing great. It's, for a crazy Thursday in the middle of a global pandemic. We have the election behind us, so we have some things to be hopeful for. And I think the vaccine is right around the corner. With a little bit of luck, we'll be the fourth country. So fingers crossed, we are healing and mending and moving forward into a better 2021.
Absolutely. I think that this has been a very interesting and unprecedented year. And I have to say, being able to look forward to 2021 is something that many of us are starting to do. And as we're thinking about 2021, given the fact that it is the end of the year, and we're thinking about your book, Bring a Dead Mouse, tell us a little bit more about how that can help someone who is now in the job search area. And it's an interesting title too, because you think about Bring a Dead Mouse, you're like, what exactly is that? And why would you bring a mouse, out of all these things? So if you can share a little bit more about the inspiration about it, it'd be great.
Yeah, so in the very beginning of the book, there's actually a photograph of my mom. And the Bring a Dead Mouse came to be because there were 10 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment. I'm one of 8 children. And I was headed off to a friend's home, and she said, well, what are you bringing? And I said, I'm not bringing anything. It's me, and I'm going to the O'Neills, and we've known them for years, and I don't need to bring anything. And she said, you never go anywhere without bringing something. When I was growing up, I had a cat, and my cat would bring me dead mice and drop them at the doorstep on my way to school. I'd walk out, and there would be the cat with this dead mouse in its mouth. I said, Mom, that's disgusting. And why is that interesting? And she said, because it was a gift. And he was telling me that he loved me and he was thinking of me. And I thought, in job search, I sort of feel like people run around sending out resumes with their cap, out looking for something to be given to them. And I thought, give to get. Don't go out asking anybody for anything. Think of something interesting that they would like to have or know or hear. And I think that's where it came from. And I don't think so. In the very beginning of the book is a picture of my mom with this stupid cat on her lap. I'm not a cat crazy person. I'm allergic, in fact. But the story came from Bring a Dead Mouse, because that's the secret to finding a job or getting a promotion or building a great relationship, is bring them something. And so that was my inspiration. She inspired me to write this book. She passed away, and I was donating my kidney to my sister. And the doctor said to my husband, well, she needs to be still for 6 to 12 weeks. And my husband said, I can't keep her still for 6 to 12 minutes. How exactly do you expect me to do it for 6 to 12 weeks? And I wrote this book. I wasn't still for 6 to 12 weeks, but I had the book in my head. And I think in a lot of ways, my mother not being around to see it inspired me to get my rusty dusty going. And I wrote it in the 2.5 weeks I was home, recovering from that surgery on my sister's a lawyer, and I was recovering up in Boston where she was, and she had these long legal pads, and I hand wrote each of the 10 chapters. But again, it was in my head, Bernardo. I knew the book was already there. I'd spent many, many, many years coaching, and I've been the head of the New York office and at LHH for 14 years. We have 500,000 clients a year. So I had tons of stuff to write about. Keeping it short and to 10 chapters was hard. It's a little tiny book, but I think it's chock full of ideas. So my mom inspired me. And then what inspires me now is all the hundreds and thousands of people that I help every year. I get the most incredibly humbling, wonderful notes. I feel quite honored to have the privilege, to have the trust of so many people who put their trust in me with their job search or their job promotion or their pivot to a new industry or their change in their function or whether they should up credential. I had someone do a very, very expensive program because I told him I just thought it would change his life. And I was lucky. It turned out I was right. But that's a lot of trust. So I feel very lucky.
Yeah, and I'm very blessed to have had my paths cross with you. And now that you're talking a little bit about your background for some of the viewers that are just joining us, share with us a little bit more about who you are. And you mentioned being the head of the office at LHH.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit more about who you are, your background for those that are just joining, because the book really ties into a lot of your expertise. So I think that'll be really helpful for people to know.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I am the head of the New York office and the Stanford office for LHH, which is the largest outplacement firm in the world. It's a human resources firm under the subsidiary, actually, of Adecco. And it's a gigantic machine. We have 300 offices in 67 countries. Again, we touch about 500,000 people a year. And what we do is coach people, both who are in transition as well as people in roles, to be their very best selves. I've been at the firm for almost 14 years. And during that time, I've seen a lot of growth. The business is, unfortunately counter-cyclical a little bit. So it's growing dramatically as more and more people are being separated from their firms. There is lots of hiring still going on, but there is definitely a fair amount of separations. And I'm on what's called the career transition side. So I am a certified executive coach and can coach people in roles, but I choose to be only on the career transition side, working with people to find their next best job. Sometimes it's not a job. Sometimes it's consulting. Sometimes it's starting your own gig. Sometimes it's buying a franchise. It varies, but it's finding what it is you're going to do next. I've been doing that for the last 14 years. Prior to that, I ran my own firm. I've run 5 nonprofits, and my initial 18 years was as an investment banker on Wall Street, which gives me a business background. So I'm not on the HR side. I came directly out of the business. Prior to that, as I mentioned, I was born and raised in New York, in Queens. There were 10 of us. I am one of 8 children, and I always tease people that I think your birth order, as well as the size of your family, tells a lot about you. And I think I always tease people there are true extroverts like me, but more than 80% of the world are really introverts. And I think I'm an extrovert because there were so many of us. I was running around trying to get attention, saying, look at me, when there's only one mom and 8 children grabbing at her. So that's a little bit about me and my journey.
You bring up an excellent point. Actually, at some point, I'll be covering a book which is called The Birth Order Book by Dr. Kevin Lehman, or Lemon, I think is how he says his last name. And he does all this analysis on birth order and personalities that come of it, and blended families and all this other stuff that comes into play. But you're absolutely right. And I think we have various different joiners on different platforms here today. So if you're just joining us on Amazon.com/live, we're speaking with Charlotte A. Lee, who is the author of Bring a Dead Mouse. She just kind of gave us a little bit about her background and also the book itself. So you were mentioning the inspiration behind the book. What could someone learn from the insights of reading the book itself? There you go. First of all, I love that the graphic is fun and entertaining, cartoonish. Because if it was it could go very bad.
Right, but when you do these, you pick an artist who reflects who you are, and it was great. And then the most important thing I have to show you, I don't know if you can see, but this is Mommy and her cat.
Oh,
the dumb cat, but it's on the first page. But anyway, it was a great journey, and I actually revised and expanded it twice. So I wrote it first in 2009, and then I did 2 more editions, and I'm going to either put another edition together or write another book. And I wanted to call it Charlotte's Web, Network or Not Work, but I may have a fight with E.B. White, so I don't know if I can have that title. So I'm in the process of speaking to my attorney about that. But I do think network is the key to the world. And And I'm feeling a little inspired these days during COVID to be able to write another book. We've all got a little more time, no traveling, no commuting, not a lot of socializing. So I have time and I should do that. I was going to segue that into a couple of tips, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the number one thing I'm probably known for is networking. If you look at my LinkedIn, most people laugh because I say that I'm an author and an executive coach, but I'm a connector. And I love doing that. I love thinking about who would Bernardo like to talk to? Who would be someone that he'd find interesting, that would find him interesting, and making those connections. And by having over 3,000 people on my LinkedIn and others who are not on LinkedIn at all, it comes to me all the time. So every day I'm connecting people to others. And I love doing that because relationships, it turns out, is what makes us human and what makes us different. So I'm very focused on doing 3 things with networking. One is to make it a daily exercise. So if you're going for a walk or going for a run or on your Peloton or whatever it is you're doing, networking is something you should be doing every day and put it in your lexicon so it gets done every day. 2 is it has to be measured. So if you don't measure it, it doesn't really count. It's like, oh yeah, I'm losing weight. Oh, how much did you lose? Oh, I don't know. I'm not weighing myself. Well, I don't get that. That which gets measured gets done. So I think we should measure it. And you need to pick a number. Now, is it going to be 75 people a week? Probably not, but you need to measure what it is you're doing. So 1, I would make it every day. 2, I would definitely measure it. And 3, I'd be outside my comfort zone a little bit. So maybe you could speak on a panel, even though you don't want to. It's Zoom now, so you don't even have to physically be there. Maybe you join an organization that you don't feel comfortable really doing, but you're going to do it anyway. I'm half Chinese, and I joined a couple of affinity groups, Asian affinity groups. And it's difficult to network with an Asian population, but I'm really learning a lot and helping a lot of people. And some of them have been really kind of neat. So think outside of your comfort zone and try to do something, especially during this time, that pushes you beyond where you might normally be. And I think at the end of the day, the more you do, the better you get at it.
I agree with you. Practice is definitely something that will help stretch and build that muscle. And I think there's a misconception that networking, and one of the things that set people up for failure is before COVID, when you do go out to a networking event, one is you get overwhelmed by the amount of people that are physically there and feel this urge to have to speak to every single person, when in reality, all you really need are 1 or 2 contacts or 1 or 2 in-depth relationships
Absolutely.
that you build. And so when I've coached and I've worked with clients, especially when they're introverted, I try to encourage them. It doesn't have to be extrovert or introvert. And that introvert and extrovert is about energy and where you draw energy from. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that concept in and of itself. But ultimately, it is a matter of getting out there, talking to people. And the other thing also, to tie into the tips that you're sharing, is that we think of networking as a bad thing. We already do it. Like when you're meeting somebody either at the gym, of course, again, we're talking about normal times, but even, or pre-COVID times. But when you're meeting someone, you meet people organically. So it's just getting your personality out there. And with networking, it's more of a conscious effort than just organically meeting someone. So I like the fact that the tips that you're sharing is definitely getting out there, networking, and especially now with Zoom or any of the other platforms where you're at home, you could be, able to just chat with somebody. And then also numbers are equally important. Measuring those numbers is true. How to make sure that you are making progress as it relates to making those connections. And then the last thing I'll just echo to what you were talking about, which is when we're talking about finding jobs, spending countless of hours applying online not only feels frustrating and sending your resume into an abyss, there's no reward in it. You will find your job through networking, through talking to people. And 9 times out of 10, the job that you're looking for is not posted. It's through somebody else's conversation, and they sometimes create it for you. So
Exactly. And I think, I always tell people you do get a lot of rejections, but with the online stuff, you don't even get the rejection. You actually think you're in play because they don't reject people. So you think you've got something going on and you think you've done something. And that's a frustrating thing. You haven't really done anything. That's passive. I was chatting with someone about counting how many phone calls he made, and he had 9. And I said, gosh, you had 9 calls today? He said, well, I didn't get 8 of the people. And I said, well, then you had 1 phone call this week and 8 voicemails. And he
Right.
said, oh, yeah, dude. I was like, come on. So I think we have to be honest with how we count things as well. But, look, the trends, there are lots of trends, but one of them, unfortunately, is, ghosting. And so I think because they're so inundated with 8 million resumes or 8 million people trying to get promoted, you sort of get lost in the shuffle and get ghosted because people don't like delivering negative news. And so they step away because they feel embarrassed and upset. And so at the end of the day, I think you really need to focus on referrals. Even if you're trying to get promoted, the way to get promoted is have a fantastic array of champions inside your firm who are your foot soldiers who help you promote yourself by promoting the work you do, them do with you, and then promote it too. That's the way to do this. That's all relationships. And all networking is relationships. I sort of feel like networking gets this dirty thing like it's some sort of sleazy sales thing. And it's not. It's just being you and building authentic relationships with strangers, not with the people you already know, with strangers. I mean, I used to say hello to the people on the train. I'm not getting married to these people, but I can say hello. And invariably, they'd break a conversation with me, and it turned out to be someone incredibly neat, someone really cool with a very cool and interesting job that I could then connect to someone else. So you certainly don't want to come across as, odd or strange, but living inside your cocoon, is not nearly as fruitful. It turns out there's been lots of studies that show that healthy or happy people have good relationships with others. And so we are social being, humans. So you making sure you're growing your circle and not diminishing it is so important. I want there to be a lot of people at my funeral. I do not want an empty room. I want a really, really busy, loud, raucous group having a great party. And then them network with each other and say, this is what Charlotte would want us to do. Network with each other. Who are you? Where do you work? What do you do? That's going to make me happy, because that, I hope, will be my legacy, is making sure people don't hesitate to connect to someone else. It's the best thing about us humans.
Yes. Well, let's make sure that we're blessed that that doesn't happen for a very, very, very long time. But the point that I would say, though, to go back to the point that you were raising in regards to being employed and not getting that promotion, you're right. Many times what we work under is this false pretense that just by doing great work, it's going to be recognized. And it does get recognized to a certain extent, but those that actually get ahead really are networking through other means within the organization and have sponsors across the network. And it's not just in their direct line, they have across all these other areas who are looking out for them to promote them, and advocate for them when there are discussions as it relates to talent. So you're absolutely right on that front. So networking does become extremely critical, whether you're job searching or you're looking to make your next move. And the other thing I'd also point out regarding the applying online and so forth, there's a lot of trends right now where they're introducing artificial intelligence. We already have it, as far as scanning
Yes.
through the SEO engine, or search engine optimized views of your resume, but they've taken it a bit further. And I've talked about this on other forums, and even I think on psychology, my column on psychologytoday.com, which was around the technology around facial action coding system and the marrying of that and technology, where now you have employers asking you to send in a video, which then gets uploaded to this technology to validate what you're saying is true.
Right.
So there's the other aspect of things, why it's equally important to, as you're thinking about your next role, internally or externally, to network, because that kind of authenticity and being able to show what you can bring to the table will take you far. Why don't we pause for a second, because we have various viewers on different channels. Again, we're syndicating this through amazon.com/live. I think we have 10 different viewers. You're more than welcome to just ask us questions. We're here not only to talk about Charlotte's book, but also to answer any questions that you may specifically have as it relates to job search or networking tips. And if you are watching us either on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, you're also welcome to send us any questions. So we'll pause for a second while you ask us specific questions, and we'll just give it a second here. So we have a question on any advice on what we should avoid doing when reaching out to someone we don't know.
Yeah, so we call those cold calls. I'm not crazy about cold calls because I think they can come across as strange or awkward or forward, depending on the person and you. So I tend to go into my first, second, and third degree connections and say, okay, I'm trying to get to Claire Smith. Who do I know? And then I go to Claire Smith and I see that Bernardo's connected to Claire Smith. So I then go to Bernardo and say, hey, Bernardo, you're connected to Claire Smith. Can you please connect me to Claire? So I would recommend first that you try to go warm. If after trying everything, you cannot get in and you're determined to get to this person with a cold call, I'd probably go to the social media of your choice. I use LinkedIn, but as you wish. And I go to their LinkedIn, and you have to pay for premium to do this, of course. And I send them a note and say, thought, Claire, that we would have great synergies as I do this, that, and the other thing. And I heard you speak at the Financial Women's Association, and I'd so love 10 minutes of a conversation to get your advice and perspective. Please let me know if that would be possible. I mean, that is something you could do. And they may or may not respond, but it's definitely worth a shot.
That's true. I'll also add a hack, which is most companies follow first name, period, last name at company.com or first letter, last name at company.com. And sometimes they may use the middle name, just try X. So if you want to email them directly, you can try that as well. And if LinkedIn doesn't necessarily work.
Right. And you can, the two other things you could do is you could Google and see if you could dig up there. There's lots of ways to search around looking for people's email addresses. You can certainly stalk them that way. And then the other thing, I mean, why not? And then the other thing I've sometimes done is, and I actually had someone who did that with me, was they found someone who worked at my company and asked them to give my email. I have a common name, and where I had worked before, there was another Charlotte Lee, believe it or not. And my middle initial was A, so I wasn't Charlotte.Lee at blank. I was Charlotte.A.Lee at blank because she had gotten there before me. So you could maybe get somebody who's in the company. So that's 4 or 5 ideas of how to skin that cat, as it were.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think the one thing that I've been amazed at, especially when you're doing the outreach, it's extremely critical that you do your homework on the person that you're going to talk to, even if it's an informational session or an interview. And you'll be amazed. Most people don't do the homework in advance to try to figure out how to build rapport. Because I've had many people reach out directly to me when I worked in various different Fortune 500 companies. They've never looked me up. And it's not because I'm being egotistical. I'm just like, what homework have you done to try to build a connection and motivate me to want to work with you and help you? And relationship and networking, as you and I both know, is like, planting a flower. You plant the seed,
Right.
You have to water it, you have to give it love. It takes some time. Networking is not a one and done type of exercise. That's the biggest mistake that people can make when it comes to that. Wanted to see if there were any other questions coming through before we kind of move on to a different topic.
And the one other thing I'll say about that, Bernardo, is I do think people can see through it. So you've got one shot at this, one chance to make a lasting first impression. So you want to make it good. You cannot redo this. If you don't do it correctly the first time, you're, as you say, you're one and done. So it behooves you to have your ducks in a row before reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted to see if there were any other questions, either from amazon.com/live. I don't know why I keep saying that. I mean, I guess it's because I don't want to confuse it with just amazon.com. But anyone that's watching us, if you have any specific questions on job search or networking, we're happy to answer any questions. And then again, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, Facebook, or Twitter, you can also ask any questions. If not, we're going to move on to something very special, which is a different book that may be applicable for those that have little ones in their life. So let's just see for a minute. Let's see any other questions.
The holidays are coming. You never know when you might need a book for a little one.
This is true. How can people reach out to you, by the way, before?
I'm quite happy for people to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Charlotte Lee at LinkedIn, and I work at LHH. It's very easy to find me. I make myself quite accessible, simple, so people can easily reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm most happy for them to do so. They can also reach out to me through the office, which in my email is charlotte.lee@lhh.com. I'm happy for them to do that as well. Again, do your homework. Someone reached out to me. I had done a panel for the Practicing Law Institute, and one of the lawyers reached out to me, and his moniker was on his his email. I picked up the phone and I called him and immediately put him into a tailspin. So I don't think you should reach out to people again unless you're expecting them to potentially call you and say, hey, great to hear from you. Tell me about you. Again, I'm very focused on building good relationships, period. I don't want any other relationships, just the good ones.
Before we move over off to this from this book to another one last thing I would just wanted to ask is, so those that are interested in purchasing the book, I've already featured it now. What would one expect by reading that book? What do you expect them to gain or learn from the book itself?
I've been surprised of the first of all, it's 5 stars on Amazon. It's been 5 stars on Amazon since 2009. I mean, I am shocked at how helpful people have found it to be. It's been very humbling, this experience, actually, Bernardo, because my mother told me I had this pixie dust and I should sprinkle it all over the world. And I thought she was nuts, which she might have been, but she's right. I do have a gift for helping people find jobs, make jobs better, get promoted, find their love, find their calling. And I consider myself very, very lucky. And so I want to get it out to as many people as possible. It's why I try to make the book really inexpensive. I talk everywhere I can. I am going to put it on a Kindle so you can drop it down really easily. They're going to get really 3 things out of it. They're going to get inspiration. I think people say they find it very inspiring to hear all the great stories, because all of the stories are true. And of course, we help hundreds of thousands of people. So it's anecdotal, but on a gigantic scale. So it's a great inspiration. 2, you'll get structure. How do I do this? How do I go about this? What does that look like? What does every day look like? What should my plan look like? How do I follow up? What are my emails supposed to say? Is that the right kind of thank you note? So some real pedestrian structure. What should this look like and what should I do? And 3, you'll have a plan. Like, okay, now I know what to do. I've got everything I need to figure out who I am, figure out my plan, go for the job or the promotion, and get where I want to be. And it's in a little skinny Bible, little tiny job search Bible. That's what I hear. And every once in a while, somebody will say, well, did you see what so-and-so wrote on your Amazon thing? My son or my daughter. And I'll say, no. And I'm such an idiot. I got to go on there more often and look at it, because they're moving. These comments are moving. It's incredible. So don't take it from me, take it from them. But again, when you touch a lot of people in 14 years of doing this, you get the kind of feedback you need to write the next great book. So that's, I think, what you'll walk away with.
Well, thank you for summarizing that. I think those that are, again, joining us, you're free to check out the book itself. I think it's a fantastic book. I read it from cover to cover, and a lot of insights that I still apply today and also teach as well, because I do think that there's some nuggets of insights in there that many would benefit from learning when you're thinking about networking or job search in itself. So why don't we move on to your other book that you also have, which is Where Are You, Moon? And I'm hoping
Where Are You, Moon?
Where Are You, Moon? Yes. So
this one's near and dear to my heart. Not that the other one isn't. So this is a children's book. It's from anywhere from 0 to 8. And it's a story about a little girl named Eleanor, who's my granddaughter. And her mom is a physician. And she would get up in the morning with her mom at 4 a.m. and decide that 4 a.m. was a good time to get up for her mom to go to work and also for Eleanor. So grandma got up with her and we would go out and explore the moon outside until she went back to sleep. And it's the story of the moon hiding behind clouds and hiding behind trees, and how the moon casts shadows on the ground, etc. And it's a very sweet story, I think. And again, it's gotten lots of sweet feedback. I did not do the illustrations, and the woman who did the illustrations really captured it. I think illustrations so capture it. You said that for Bring a Dead Mouse too, with the dead mouse on the front. I mean, I do think illustrations make a big difference.
They definitely do. So what?
Get Eleanor.
Yes, go ahead. So those of you who are just joining us, if you have any questions either on Bring a Dead Mouse or Where Are You, Moon, which is the children's book, feel free to ask away. Oh, she's adorable.
So this is Eleanor. Do you want to say hi? I'm Eleanor.
Hi.
So the book was written for Eleanor, and I think you get inspiration. You'd ask me what the inspiration was for the first book. The inspiration for the first book was my mom, and the inspiration for the second book was this one, Eleanor. And she was a few months old at the time, and she's, of course, now 4. But I think inspiration comes from a lot of places, and you all have to find your inspiration and write your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, she's adorable, and I find it very inspiring that a lot of the books that you've published, come from a personal place, which I think is extremely important because then you're tied to it, and it allows you to have a different perspective. And so those that are, the holidays around the corner, any guidance as to picking up this book, or what are your thoughts as far as sharing anything that they would learn from or their kids would learn from by reading the book itself?
Well, I think there's great vocabulary. I'm a big word fan. There's great vocabulary. There's stuff about nature. There's stuff about the relationship between a mother and a daughter, a mother and a granddaughter and the whole gang. So the 3 generations of, my daughter and my granddaughter. I think there's a little bit about responsibility. I think there's a lot of things that I actually didn't even notice when I wrote it. And then people who have read it have come back to me and said, what came to me. And some of it's through the illustrations. It's quite lyrical with the words and the illustrations. So, and it's a simple book. I think anything that's got a simplicity around their language that brings in nature and children, what could go wrong?
Absolutely. And I think it's appropriate now, given the fact that we're indoors and reading does become very important as well.
And the only thing you can do is go for a walk, Bernardo. I mean, there's not a whole lot more we can do.
Exactly. So before we close, I wanted to again see if there were any other questions that were coming from our Amazon live stream or any of the other platforms that we're streaming on at the moment. Otherwise, we will be closing relatively soon, but let's give it a second or so in case someone gets inspired, other than the loud, I don't know if you hear my siren outside.
That's the siren at his house.
Yes.
Saying, where's that siren coming from?
That's
it's not coming from our house.
Downside of living on a busy street in New York City. So I don't see if there are any other questions. So I wanted to not take more of your time. For those that have just joined us or joined us throughout this entire time, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm very happy to have had Charlotte join us, as well as Eleanor this evening. If you have not had a chance, please make sure you follow up here. I don't know where my buttons are at the moment, and I apologize. I'm streaming on my own over here. I don't have like a full production, and I know that's not an excuse for some people, but I'm still learning how to get the habit of using all this stuff. But if you haven't followed me, I also provide content on my YouTube channel, Career Insights with Bernardo. Or if you have any questions, either for Charlotte or myself, feel free to reach out to me directly on Instagram, Twitter, or even TikTok at Professor Tirado. I welcome you to join us and send any questions that you have. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you, Charlotte. And thank you, Eleanor. Have a great holiday.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.